Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we're talking about Distortion Meta and how it's affecting the game in a positive and a negative way. We're going to go into detail as to understanding why Distortion Meta is the way it is, why it's the best loadout, and some steps to improve Distortion Meta as Master Modes gets developed. Notice that these examples will be from the live build of the game, but understand that time to disable and time to kill numbers will obviously change with Master Modes. The intention here is to explain and educate the general StarCitizen population and also perhaps CIG itself to see what's actually happening right now in the PvP communities in the StarCitizen gameplay that we currently have, so they can better address the future of the game and better address the weapon metas and understand how to improve the gameplay as Master Modes develops. So let's dive in to why Distortion Meta is the best. Notice how that arrow didn't last very long. And the question is, well, why not? Obviously, there are lots of nuances to combat. Does he have a good merge? Is he guns on? But the reality between why that arrow lost that initial fight and why this Gladius will lose his is because distortion weapons turn off enemy guns faster than it takes to kill them. The time to disable is faster than the time to kill. Why does this matter? Well, pretty simply put, if I can turn off your weapons in half the time, I've pretty much won the fight. If you are unable to fire back, can you kill me? The answer is obviously no. If you can't get your shields back, are you more vulnerable than me? The answer is yes. So if I can disable your shield recharge and your weapons in half the time with half the bullets, I now turn the fight from an actual fight into a chase. Because as soon as I take away your ability to return fire to me, the fight is mine. And this lies the issue with distortions. If you are in the persistent universe and you are not running a mixed distortion laser setup, you are gonna fall victim to the person who does. If I'm in an arrow or a hornet and I bring a mixed laser distortion loadout, I'm gonna disable your guns in half the time and thus winning the fight. At that point, it's just a matter of chasing down the opposition and engaging when I have time. Notice how this arrow here is not able to fire, even though right now he's nose on, because halfway through that fight, I applied enough distortion damage to disable his ability to return fire. Unfortunately, that arrow pilot didn't notice in time what was really going on because the next turn ended him. So, how does this affect the larger StarCitizen gameplay? And I think the issue lies with the time to disable. Think of it this way. If I'm able to take away your ability to return fire faster than I can kill you, it leads to two things. One, I'm going to kill you anyway. It's just going to take slightly longer. But the fight's already been won. It's just basically a matter of ceremony at that point. Two, if I take away your guns, your engines, your weapons, and that kind of stuff, I leave you victim to basically sitting in space, unable to defend yourself. And if I play my cards correctly, I'm going to be able to engage much larger ships with much thicker armor and shields and do the same thing. If I'm engaging a Redeemer or a Hammerhead, for example, if I drop the shields with only a few fighters and then hit you with enough distortion, which again is going to disable you in about 1/5 the amount of time it takes to kill a Hammerhead, for example, once the Hammerhead's shields down and fully disabled, it cannot shoot back, it cannot maneuver, it cannot warp away. All it can do is stand there and watch as enemy ships float around it and decide what they want to do with it. Either they're going to shoot it when it's defenseless and not moving, or they're going to board it and take the ship. The choice is up to the enemy because you no longer can participate in the fight. You can no longer defend yourself. Take this Gladius, for example. This Gladius was able to get close up to us, try to turn around my turn rate, but again, halfway through that fight, I disallow him. I take his ability to return fire away halfway through that fight. I have half the target time that I need to win the fight, which allows me to win the fight with half the amount of target time. This, in my opinion, is a problem. I want skill-based gameplay in StarCitizen, and I think so does many of the people in the PvP community. But as of right now, if you don't have distortions, you are simply behind the meta, because the time to disable is half the time to kill. Now, a time for a full disable, which means I've taken away his ability to even function at all, is still relatively long. But the difference here is that it doesn't matter if he's fully disabled or not. If he can't shoot back, the fight's over. So, what are some examples, what are some games where distortion gameplay is done, but done to a different degree? I think games like Star Wars Squadrons did their Ion system, which is similar to, StarCitizen's Distortion, in a different way that I feel like worked really, really well. They gave distortions in their game, or ion guns in their game, a role. Ion guns would disable shields almost instantly, but the actual time to disable was a little bit longer than the time to kill, thus adding team gameplay into effect. If two ships ganged up on one, and one, attacking ship had distortions or ion guns, he'd be able to strip the shields, and the second pilot coming in would be able to use his standard lasers to do direct damage to the ship's hull, causing the ship to lose the fight much quicker than if he were to either use just standard lasers or purely ion guns. The truth is, distortions don't really know what they want to be right now, and I can't tell whether or not it's just CIG having an incomplete system, or the idea behind distortions maybe wasn't really fully fleshed out. The point is, again, look at this fight for example. We're engaging a Hornet with mostly distortion guns. So he's running what I would consider the ultimate meta Hornet setup. He's got 4 distortion guns, which means his time to disable is the fastest, and he's got 2 standard size 3 Panthers on his wingtips, which is plenty to kill a ship that's fully disabled. But the truth is, as you can see here, it just ends up prolonging and dragging fights on for quite a long time. It's not a really great feeling. If you play a game and and you have to disengage the opponent time and time and time again because you've lost the ability to fight back, it makes the gameplay feel a little, well, for lack of a better word, frustrating. Take this example again. We've now reset for a second time against this enemy Hornet, and we're going to reset a few more times before the end of this fight. But this is a good example of a fight being unable to resolve. If I can't resolve the fight, which means I can't either get to a death or I get shot down, if I can't resolve the fight within a meaningful amount of time, it just makes the gameplay feel boring, frustrating, and, well, not really exciting. I like intense gameplay. I think intense gameplay leads to a much better experience. And as we can see here, again, here's the third reset, because we've taken his ability to fire back away, so he has no choice but to disengage, wait for his shields and weapons to come back, and return to the fight. There's lots of ways to solve this problem. We can decrease the amount of time it takes to get the recharge back. We could disable guns only for a few seconds, which means I just extend the turn for a little bit and I'm back into the fight. This can also work just the same in master modes. There's not really a huge difference between the meta of guns here and the meta of guns that maybe will be in master modes. If master modes has a shorter time to disable than time to kill, the exact same problem that we're seeing here will be had in master modes. In fact, the problem might even be worse in master modes because the application of damage is higher. And so even at longer ranges, if I saturate the zone with enough damage or enough distortion, all it takes is a few shots to stop my shields from coming back and my guns from recharging to be able to meaningfully affect any kind of change. And it makes fights drag on forever. Once again, as soon as the shields come down and any meaningful amount of damage is about to be applied to me, I have no choice but to leave the fight, because I can't stick into a fight if I don't have my guns. There is a way to make this better. There is a way to make this experience less frustrating, and that's to stop full disabling of any components and systems until the ship is either fully disabled or destroyed. If I lose my guns before the fight's over, the fight's over. It's that simple. if Distortion Meta changes so that I'm either fully functional the entire fight, right up until the point where I'm fully disabled, which is either at the same time or relatively lower or higher, sorry, like a longer time, then it would be the time to kill, it'll lead to better gameplay. Think of it this way. If I have distortions and I can disable larger vessels with much heavier armor, I don't need to bring heavy weapon systems. I don't need to bring bombers. I don't need to bring better weapon systems or heavier guns, because all I need to do is disable you and then slowly chew on you for the better part of 10 minutes or whatever is necessary. It allows ships that are not designed for certain categories of fighting to exist and perform in areas of combat that they necessarily shouldn't be performing in. For example, if a gang of 4 or 5 gladiuses are running up on a hammerhead or a larger vessel, it doesn't matter what the level of armor on that Idris or hammerhead is, because I'm just going to disable you, take away your ship's weapons, guns, and shields, and then sit on you for 20 minutes and chew on you with my size 3 guns. It makes for frustrating gameplay. Now, if I want to disable that ship, specifically to board it, I should still have that option. But if I've won the battle because I have shorter time to kill weapons, and then I switch to distortions and I saturate the enemy ship with distortions and disable it strictly for the purpose of boarding it, that's a different story. But the time to disable should always be slightly longer than the time to kill, because the time to disable, in my opinion, is just making gameplay more frustrating. You need to have fights resolve. Just like this fight here. I've lost my ability to fire back. I cannot resolve the fight, and so I return to a defensive posture. I defensively fly away, and I wait for my shields and guns to come back. The enemy pilot has done that multiple times to me as well. As you can see here, this fight has failed to resolve for the last 10 minutes, and it's not really exciting gameplay. It's kind of like being put in a situation where you continuously have to keep throwing the ball back to your partner until you can get a shot. It just makes things boring. Look, Distortion Meta is always going to be part of the game, but I think we can get to a place and we can all agree that if fights aren't resolving, that's probably an issue with the system's core gameplay rather than the guns themselves. The choice has to be made that is time to disable going to be shorter than time to kill. My position is to advocate for shorter time to kill and longer time to disable for many reasons, like you've heard me say. I think if you're going to disable a ship, it's because your intention is to board that ship, which means you've probably won the overall battle. Either make it so that time to disable is the same as time to kill, but do not take away the ability of that ship being distortioned for its ability to fight back away, because then if you take the guns and shields away from a ship before the ship is disabled, the fight is ended as soon as the ability for the enemy is taken away for him to actually respond and defend himself. It's like getting into a gunfight, but as soon as the guy shoots at you, you no longer have access to using your firearm. And in a gunfight, that would be certain death. It's the same thing in StarCitizen. If you stop the ability for someone to defend themselves, they cannot win the fight, period, which means the fight is over. So, hopefully this was a better explanation, guys, as to why Distortion Meta is the way that it is. Understand that in the persistent universe, if you do not have mixed loadout weapons and you're going against someone who does, disengage the fight and get yourself mixed loadout weapons. Because the person who does bring mixed loadouts to the fight is going to win the fight regardless of whether or not you bring the right set of guns. So, train fast, train hard, train every day. And understand that Distortion Meta is what you're going to encounter in the persistent universe. Now, it might be a good idea for ships that are doing hauling cargo, for doing all kinds of different, I guess you could say, PvE endeavors, that if they're concerned about getting engaged by pirates, it might be their best interest to fit all distortion guns on their ship, because the Distortion Meta will allow you to disable them much quicker than if you were to kill them. So if your intention is to have the lowest amount of target time possible for the maximum amount of reward, for the highest time you can to keep yourself safe, distortions might be the answer. For example, if you're in a constellation and you get engaged by a group of PvP players or some bad people, if you have full distortion turrets, those turrets are going to be able to apply a lot less damage onto the opponents and take away their guns and take away their ability to defend themselves much faster than if it was just to use standard lasers and tickle their shields. It might be your best interest to fit full distortions because it'll allow you to be more defensive quicker. It's up to you whether you want to go with it or not, and it's also up to everyone in the persistent universe to decide what they want to do to defend themselves and what loadouts they want to pick. But if I was someone hauling ship and cargo, I would fit all distortions on my freelancer or Connie as I could if my intention was to run and disengage and stay alive. I think for a lot of people who've been watching my content on this channel, you know that multi-crew right now in live is in a bit of a tough spot. There's really not much you can do when it comes to being effective at a multi-crew ship. But there are some things we can do, but that's for a different video. Anyway, I wanted to kind of rant today about the distortion meta and express and explain and educate as many people as I can about why distortions are so powerful, why time to disable being lower than time to kill, in my opinion, is a bit of a bad thing, and there's some ways we can go about changing that, and that the future of StarCitizen is truly in CIG's hands when it comes to master modes, and hopefully we get to a place where distortions are in a good spot, have a good purpose, and actually have some meaningful, places to be done in the fight. But like I said before, I think time to kill should always be lower than time to disable. But that's just my opinion. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for supporting. Remember guys, we stream every day at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time till 6 o'clock, so please stop by the Twitch and have some fun with us. Please ask questions, join our Discord, it's all linked here under the description. And last before I go guys, please consider watching this video. I think it's very, very important. Thank you for your time. My name is Avenger1, and I'll see you next time.